Hello, my name is Dante Renee, and welcome to the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more. Like tonight's film, this is 1983's Silk, Satin. It's this one right here, Silk, Satin, and Sex. This one here. I can barely, but this is on a double feature with Peakorama, the old DVD label for Vinegar Syndrome. And they would do double features on here. I'm just showing you this one right here and trying to keep it good for YouTube. This is directed by somebody by the name of Lawrence Talbot. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but, well, in The Wolfman from the 1940s, that was Larry Talbot, correct? Oftentimes, directors could have pseudonyms. This is not a director's name that I'm very familiar with, although I do have some of his films. This is very interesting. Well, in this particular film, Silk, Satin and Sex, we have Vanessa Del Rio, we have Tiffany Clark, we have one of my personal favorites, Mai Lin. There's a variety of people in here. This is from 1983. Lawrence Talbot. That's just really taking me for a loop here. I have some notes here, so you might see my eyes divert. But here, I'm gonna go into this with some words. I recommend watching this with the window open about an inch in the winter, curtains closed, and around 5:30 in the morning. I don't know. That's what I did. Not late at night, super early in the morning, but it's still dark outside in the winter. I don't know why. Quiet, ethereal, electronic, pulsing, trance, natural, new age, and then possibly funky. Those are some those are some feels. Those are some feels of the vibe. Those are some feels of the music. I'm a really big fan when movies have the title of the film not happen right away, right? Where maybe 5 minutes goes on, maybe 10 minutes goes on, and then all of a sudden the title comes up. Sometimes I've seen films where the title never comes up. There's no opening credits, it just kind of starts. And I mean, nowadays, modern films are not like that. Modern films have the longest credits at the beginning and the end. But isn't that interesting? But this is a film where the title comes about 5 minutes after the movie has already been playing and it already started. There's something, I always thought there was something really powerful about that. I don't know. There's just something powerful about that. And there's a theme song in here that, you can't trust anything in these hardcore triple X films in the names in the credits, because oftentimes it can be pseudonyms. You can't trust anything. Pseudonyms for the director, pseudonyms for the cast. The only thing you can, not the cast, pseudonyms for the crew. The only names you can trust are the cast, oftentimes, if, they're the big names for the film. But the cast, you don't know who has a real name in there, and oftentimes I don't think any of them are real names. But we have a pop song that's the title track for this that is really, really good. Really great 80s pop song, and for being such early 80s, it almost sounds to me like it could be mid 80s. Female vocalist, and just really, really good. And pop music, pop music, I've always been a fan of so many different kinds of music. And in 80s films, in 80s hardcore films, in 80s horror films, in 80s exploitation films, you can get some great pop music. Of course, it's not Madonna. It's not, Tiffany. It's not, Michael Jackson or Prince, but you're getting some really great kind of diamonds in the rough if you like that kind of music. Oftentimes people relate bow, 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 funky type music to porno films, but that's not always the case, especially for 80s X films. For 80s X films, you can get pop music. Now, we have a really quiet opening to this film, and that's where the ethereal vibe comes in. Just the sounds of saliva and bodies, natural, and mouths. It's quiet the way you would consider a real, kind of a real sex scene that wasn't being filmed. Does that make sense? A real, copulation scene that wasn't in a movie, right? It's natural. It's quiet. Just the sounds of bodily functions. And there's something very, very natural and relaxing about it at the same time. This film has an anthology format. I've said this a lot on this channel, that the two genres of film that tend to really fly with the anthology format are horror films and erotica, sexploitation, hardcore, softcore, whatever. Those are the two genres of films that tends to have the anthology format the most. And that's really interesting. And in this film, we do have an anthology format, and we have a wraparound story that is based upon a group of women who are telling stories about meeting their spouse, which is also rather unique for a hardcore film. Talking about meeting their spouse. Typically marriage in the traditional sense and meeting your married partner is not typically a storyline in hardcore films, unless free love creeps in as well, which it does in here. We have a leader again in this particular case. We have a lingerie company, door to door. We have a woman who's training other women. We have mysterious red envelopes. These mysterious red envelopes are a story point at the beginning and at the end. And now this is where things get really, really interesting. How am I going to put this into words? But we have this experimental editing, this surreal editing. You have the core characters, and you think that all you're going to have are the core characters. The core characters, and then the men that they've met, and that they've married. But the experimental edit of Silk, Satin, and Sex is that unknown characters are introduced into the film in a surrealistic sense, representing symbolism, representing the mind, representing feelings, representing fantasy, personified fantasy. Oh man, I don't know if I've ever quite seen anything like this before. And I know I say that all the time in these videos, but that's why these videos are these videos for these films, right? Like, it puts the viewer in a place of, like, we're strangers. Like, we're strangers who are invading in foreign territory, and we don't know what the hell is going on. And it makes for a jarring, yet ethereal and surreal and very avant-garde experience, almost turning it into an art house film in some regards. There's a character of the maid played by, what's her name? I'm blanking on her name right now. Veronica Hart. Very small role in here from Veronica. And her character really personifies these unknown characters. Like, she's a really good representation of that, even though you kind of know her and you kind of know her place in the film. You really, like, you realize her place in the film is kind of like the place of the unknown strangers to us viewers in the film. And so she's intercut experimentally with food during sex scenes from other people in other places, in other rooms. There's a mysterious vibe to this film. One of the stories takes place in an office building after it closed, and they're trapped in there, Mai Lin and this guy. And it reminded me atmospherically in some way of a movie that I really love that I watch every Christmas season called P2, about a girl that gets trapped in a parking garage, and there's a psychotic parking lot attendant who traps her in there and stuff. It kind of just gave me that vibe. But the music, you see, the music in this film, minus the last story, which is a little bit more traditional in hardcore musical territory, the music in this film just repetitious in a positive way, trance-like, and just mysterious and kind of new agey and mystical or something. But in this particular story, it was really mysterious. There was just a mysterious vibe, almost like a horror film. You know, the mind, fantasies, reality, we are the strangers to it in this film. The viewers are the strangers. We're the welcomed strangers. What kind of movies are these? What kind of movies are these? What kind of movies are hardcore films from the golden age? Shot on film with scripts and plot lines, production value, style, art house sensibilities, diverse music from unknown sources, possibly library music, but who really knows? Sometimes stolen. Renegade films? Films that were sometimes illegal to make and hard to do and hard to distribute. Illegal in many territories. What kind of movies are these? Not just hardcore, but the erotic genre in general, where the style is the substance. What is a movie? That's a great question. What, motion pictures? Moving pictures? I'm a big fan of silent horror films from the 20s, early 20s, and I'm a big fan of black and white cinema, horror cinema from the 20s and the 30s in particular. And they are so different than modern films in that either for the silent films, it was all music, and then the first talkies, it was like all talking with very little soundtrack. In these hardcore films, you're getting sometimes almost a bit of a silent film where the dialogue is the sex. So it really makes you wonder. These particular films are so different than other types of films because the sex is the dialogue. And the sex is the centerpiece of a plot revolving around the sex. And the erotica is part of the style, but the style of the film sometimes feels like it's at the forefront and the sex is last. And it just makes for something that's an experience where you're watching a movie, you're getting horned up, but you're also fascinated by the style and the art. If you're into European cinema, like European horror cinema, if you're into German films like the Necromantic series, or Jorg's other films, which are even more artistic, you have an element where you have the art house meeting brutal horror, extreme horror, where the extreme horror is sometimes at the forefront, and then sometimes the style is at the forefront. And that is something I can say about hardcore cinema as well, is that it's a complicated mix, a unique mix that is only for, content aside, it's only for people who watch films a certain way, or who view films a certain way. Now, of course, I love, more mainstream films. I love, it's the Christmas season. I love National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. I love Home Alone. I love these things. They operate on a different level. But what's a different movie watching level than something like this film, content aside. But what's interesting is that every time I watch even those mainstream films, those popular films, I'm still watching them differently than other people do. So no matter what, whether it's a hardcore film or whether it's Home Alone, I'm watching movies differently than other people. And that's more noticeable with mainstream films. But when I watch a hardcore film, it's like I'm at home. I can be at home there. Like, oh, the way you watch films is okay here, I think. But it's like the way you watch films when you watch Home Alone, well, that's kind of weird. That's kind of bizarre. Why are you picking up on things that you shouldn't be picking up on? Why are you so emotionally involved or impacted by, pieces of the score in the way that those scenes were shot? Like everybody else with mainstream films leaves the theater and just, says that was really cool. Why do you leave not thinking about the plot as much as the experience? There you go. Hopefully that makes sense. But it doesn't have to. Movies make sense, but they don't have to make sense logically. They can make sense illogically too. I can watch a very surrealistic film like a David Lynch film. Everybody uses him as an example, right? And then with good reason. And I can say that made total sense. but not logically. It made total sense somewhere else inside of me. Some there must be something else rather than just this, than just reason and rationale. There's got to be something else at play. And I think most people just work off of reason and rationale, but people who involved in art, there's something else at play. What is it? David Lynch famously used to say, "Where do ideas come from? Where do they come from? And you got to catch them quickly or you'll lose them. Where do they go? Where do they come from and where do they go? Do they come from God? Do they come from experience? Do they come from inborn from your parents? Do they come from some unknown sources? Some people who've censored media believe they come from the devil. Where do they come from? Where do ideas come from? And that's an important question. But where do they go when you lose them? And maybe another question is, the same ideas given to two different people would make two different movies, not the same film. And that is super interesting. Hardcore cinema operates on another wavelength. Sure, it's meant to be erotic. I mean, it would be a disservice to these films if they weren't erotic, but sometimes they're not. But is that just personal erotic taste? Or is it something else? Like, how about when they're horrific? How about when they're violent? As one person said, I wouldn't want to meet somebody who is turned on by this by this particular film. Not this film. I'm talking about a film that has hardcore and it's super violent, right? And disturbing. It's like, what is this? Well, what that shows, like a film like Her Name is Lisa, what that shows is, number one, it's a movie, but number two, it shows something else. It shows that there is something else at play in these films. Silk, Satin, and Sex is an extremely unique vibe. It's an extremely unique experience. And it's something that you're not going to get in a non-hardcore film. And the way that you consume this film might show that you consume all films differently, including mainstream films. That you will walk out of, you will walk, I keep using it as an example, but you will walk out of, let's take the Nightmare Before Christmas, and you will have been impacted by the film differently than all your friends who don't watch these types of movies, these hardcore films, erotic films. So there's something differently at play here, where style is the substance, but movies are different than what everybody else thinks they are. Maybe that's the key. It's nice to be back here. I do not talk candidly like this I'm doing right now, typically. But I look at this YouTube page as an encyclopedia of films and not my personal life, unless I'm, it's not a vlog is what I mean. Of course, my personal life is these films and they get intertwined. It's not entertainment, not just entertainment. It's deeper than that. But this isn't like, I don't have a channel where I'm showing collections and hoarding and hauls and, whatever. I don't even edit these videos. There might have been a couple times I did back in the day because there was a mistake or something. There's no fancy nothing, this is an encyclopedia, and I pop back on when I can, and unfortunately, you know, I have health issues that prevent me from speaking sometimes. So when I can speak, I would love to still be a part of putting out new content on this channel. And even if I don't, there is a encyclopedia here, and that makes me happy.